Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the conclusive session of this very successful two-day inaugural Cultural Investment Forum. It's a pleasure to be here, and we want to talk about digital renaissance, a new age of creative collaboration. And let me begin with a provocation. One could say that digital culture is as old as humanity. We tend to think of it as something new, yet if we pause for a moment and turn to the root of the word digital, we discover something older, something profoundly human. Digital comes from the word digitus, which is Latin for fingers. Fingers are the primordial digital device. Anthropologists remind us that our digits, our opposable thumbs, are the very instruments that allowed culture to emerge. With fingers, we could grasp a stone to shape it into a tool, beat a drum, summon a rhythm, wield a brush, and even carve scripts. Fingers are the primordial digital device. Our hands were the first keyboard, our thumbs were the first cursor. So if culture has always depended on digits, on fingers, then surely culture has been, in some sense, been digital culture, which means that what we call digital culture today, which is bound by algorithms and interfaces and social media, might more accurately be described as something else, and maybe I prefer to call it coded culture. Is that playing? Yes. I say this to make a bold claim. The current phase of digital culture, the culture of code and computation, is simply the latest manifestation of a longer story. It is a new chapter, not a new book, because just as the hand once chiseled a stone and later turned the page of a manuscript, today it taps the glass of a screen or types into a field of code. The essence is still the same, but the gestures are new, because culture is written by the tools of its age. This reframing matters because when we see today's digital as part of a continuum instead of a rupture, we begin to recognize that culture only advances when we are willing to shake off the bags or the baggage of rigid categories. To think with independence, and if I may use a word that always causes a little bit of discomfort, agnostically. To think agnostically is to think beyond boundaries. It is that agnostic mindset that allows us to build bridges between the old and the new, to see continuity where others see disruption, and to apply ideas across contexts, whether to a manuscript, a metaverse, or a national pavilion at a World Expo. At Insignia, the firm that I run, we were honored to shape the entire visitor experience strategy for the Saudi Arabian Pavilion at the Osaka Expo 2025. We did not do this by beginning to ask, will this be digital, will it be physical, will it be virtual? Instead, we were agnostically working, guided by principles of humanistics, our proprietary design thinking system to decode and define visitor experiences. Humanistics helped us craft new paradigms that connect cultures, engage communities, and stimulate commerce. And it was particularly important in Osaka, where Saudi Arabia and Japan have profound affinities, such as traditions of hospitality, reverence for craftsmanship, and respect for heritage, yet also remain defined by distinct cultural signatures. The experience for the Saudi Pavilion was anchored in the master theme of an epic journey of new discoveries. The theme embraced the full spectrum of digital culture, both technological and tactile. It found expression across every touch point, from immersive films, interactive media, and AI-enhanced storytelling to traditional digital components, the hand tracing of Arabic calligraphy, the textures of finely crafted merchandise, and the result was a singular arc where code and crafted culture amplified one another. Coded culture has no borders. It would be disingenuous to suggest that there are no distinctions between the past and present. The technological manifestations of digital culture has qualities our ancestors could scarcely imagine. When culture is coded and streamed, it can be co-created across continents. A Saudi calligrapher can sketch a single stroke that in an instant can be transformed into an interactive installation by a coder in Korea. Musicians in Lagos, in London, LA, can improvise together in the same digital studio with their beats layered in real time. So filmmaking, theater, design, and education are now all conducted at planetary speed and scale. What once took decades of travel, diplomacy, or migration can today unfold in the instant of a keystroke. But culture will always be about human connections. This session that we are going to host now, and I'm going to quickly introduce and bring our panelists on board. The session will explore how digital platforms, real-time collaboration, and immersive storytelling are breaking down barriers and forging new partnerships, how they are bringing together cultural heritages, and how, as investors and institutions, we can support this shaping of a truly borderless cultural economy. But in our enthusiasm for the new, we must remember something timeless. Culture, whether digital in the sense of fingers or digital in the sense of fiber optics, must always have humanity at its heart. When we lose that human essence, culture risks becoming spectacle without substance. Think of NFTs. Once hyped as cultural treasures, some worth millions, now they languish as curiosities of speculation. The irony is almost poetic. Pronounce NFT as an acronym rather than an initialism, you arrived at neft, which in Arabic means fuel. Yet today, NFTs seem to have entirely run out of gas. I would like to now introduce my panelists. In every arena of cultural exchange, the challenge endures, and to ensure whether culture is coded or carved, streamed or sculpted, it continues to reveal our shared humanity. And on that note, it is my privilege to introduce the voices at the forefront of this dialogue, leaders who are helping to redefine how digital culture and human collaboration intersects. I'd like to now welcome to the stage Chris Cummings, Alberei, Bjornsen Christensen, and Roy Ammit to please come on stage and join me in a discussion which will provoke further questions. Please. Gentlemen, thank you very much, and welcome to the panel. It is the conclusive session of the evening of 2 days of what has been thoroughly enjoyable and enlightening conversations. I'd like to maybe give you all a minute or two to just quickly introduce yourselves and what you do in your specialism and the lens from which you look at the world. And then I have a few questions that I would love to, ignite as a conversation between us. Please, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm Lor. I'm the co-founder of Sbin, and we're building the physical and digital infrastructure for culture. So we focus around luxury, art, fashion, and I love your introduction about the digits and the origins of the word, because I actually spent 8 years as a bespoke tailor before, so really working with my hands and
wonderful,
being an artisan. And after that, I spent 9 years in deep tech, and now we're merging the two worlds. So
amazing. Yourself?
Hi.
Laura, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Roy from the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and we develop partnerships in order to create new values from our collections and assets. And today, as you said, the digital is really central for our society. And by digitizing our assets, we create media assets and digital assets that can be better or more diffused, distributed, reach larger types of public, and today also can be recreated by creative and artists.
Wonderful. Bjorn?
So my name is Bjorn, or Bjorn Stjerne. I'm one of the 3 founders of Superflex. So 3 visual artists coming together 33 years ago and creating the artist Superflex. Very much in a response to that we do not really trust this celebration of the artist genius. We trust the collective. We work with any form of medium, work with the expanded collective, including participants in maybe also making a public space. To today, where we talk about interspecies living, taking it to the extreme. In the study, we say the best idea might come from a fish.
Interesting. Interesting comment. But Chris, over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your view on the world from New Orleans?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chris Cummings. I'm the founder of Iconic. So at Iconic, what we really think in terms of what we're building is the same thing that Fanatics did for sports, we're doing for culture. We build end-to-end platforms that cultural institutions and brands use to be able to bring their stories and their experiences to life. That could be a digital platform reinventing 3D and digital twins and how we tell stories both in person and online. It could be reinventing through limited editions how a cultural institution can engage global audiences and drive fundraising, not in the store, but across the entire world at the same time. And I think the big thing for us is just platform itself means that the technology gets better every day and it's shared by all of our clients. And so every day you see it do something new it didn't do before.
Fascinating. So maybe I'll begin by asking a question. I think the common denominator between the 4 of you is that you're continuously peering into the future, seeing what tomorrow holds and things that are manifesting from a technology standpoint. So maybe my first question, and I'll start with you, Chris, is if cultural institutions today are increasingly collaborating with tech firms, right? What principles should guide those partnerships to ensure that the values, the shared values, are being protected rather than just simply outsourcing? So how does that relationship, let's say, work between a cultural institution and a large tech company, whether it's digital infrastructure or whether it's a media platform?
No, it's a fantastic question, and there's a lot of ways in which you can see this go wrong. I think in general, a technology company or really any company working with a cultural institution needs to understand the values and the mission of that institution. There needs to be a level of transparency and accountability that there's more transparency and accountability in culture in general than there is at a for-profit business. And so there has to be a blend and understanding of how this technology is being used and developed that aligns with those goals. Because if it's not, what you often see is a museum spends all this money to develop something and then they have to throw it away.
Sure, and
for
beyond,
a number of reasons.
Thank you for that, Chris. And beyond, you work in the public realm in the context of physical assets and looking at activation of spaces. From your perspective, how important is the digital collaboration space, and how would you, for the sake of this context, define collaborators for you? Like in the context, you have a wide span of things. So when you say collaboration in this new era of the digital renaissance, what does that mean to you?
I would say digital representation is, I think first it starts with a creative thinking into a specific context. So you develop a work as an artist, you are interested in who is using, who might be a participant. And at some point you then also think about, so how is it then represented more widely? I would say that our focus is on the interaction, in context with people and so on. We've worked with the internet TV platforms. We developed internet TV 1999 with a 56K modem. We're able to open up studios around the world with the migrants in Italy, coming from Morocco, to a little village in Japan and so on, trying to experiment with what that platform can do. But it started with the physical space. So for us, as artists, we make form, we make settings, and the mediums are there to use. but we choose carefully which one makes sense in a given context.
Roy, yourself?
Yeah, what we are doing is really trying to make the partnership in order to find someone that is doing his work, his innovation, come and meet us, and together we create a new service, a new way of getting to our collection, a new ways of reaching and doing stuff with it. I'll give you some examples. We have a great partnership of printing books on demand. So books that are not distributed any longer, like the 18th century, 19th century, and you can, on one click, get it at your home. The same goes for music. Now we have a new project digitizing decor of theater and opera and distributing it largely. So these ways for each project to find how we create together with our partner the value in order to share it for a large public.
Interesting. Very good on. And let me shift gears a little bit. I think it's lovely to sit here and profess and talk about some of the things that look like opportunities, but maybe it'll be good for the audience to also learn where you see currently areas of friction in the areas of collaboration. Could you speak a little bit maybe to areas where you have faced challenges and where you see friction? And maybe we look at it from the perspective of either an artist who is trying to engage and collaborate with whether it's institutions or other stakeholders. Where is the tension in this? Because we are witnessing a great renaissance of sorts. You see collaboration between, different media. You have animatics, merging with calligraphy. You got sculpting working with architecture. Where is the tension and where is the friction, and how can we solve for that?
Definitely. If you like, I can start from my side, because from my perspective, when I started working on technology, it really came from a very rich heritage and craftsmanship world, where the concept of digitization is a bit different from music or movies. Different mediums, I think, have different kinds of friction in the digitization process. And so, having no background in technology, the first question that I had to remove the actual friction was, what is the virtual language that we could use to digitize something like a t-shirt? Because I cannot copy and paste it and WhatsApp you a t-shirt. But I can do that with a photo or a video, right? And so for me, it was, personally with my co-founder Liana, was to understand what are the protocols and formats that we could actually use. And blockchain came out as the winner, as the standard, in the sense of how to verify the authenticity and trace its whole journey, for one simple reason, because you cannot copy and paste a Bitcoin. And so that, let's say, non-fungible aspect of the blockchain become the underlying technology on which then we built all the other elements.
That solves the friction of authenticity and ownership.
Yeah.
And convertibility and exchange.
Yeah, and then I'll just add a final part. It was
Sure.
also the physicality, that once we had the digital language, what was the physical aspect of the standard? And so RFID technology with NFC and ultra-high frequencies, UHF, that was the other part of the puzzle. So we had to figure out
Fascinating.
the digital and the physical.
Fascinating. What about yourself?
Yes, here we talk about Renaissance, and of course there's a lot of projects that are being done. We don't see all the projects that are not being done. And this is mainly because there are structure and institution, that the way of working, of doing their stuff since a long time. Mm-hmm. And what's happened today with all the accelerating digital movement, that we are confronted in each and every aspect of our work. The last one, of course, is all the AI
Phenomena. Yeah,
that ourselves, as a national library, we are at the center of this thing today, with like millions of digital assets that are there. They can be used for feed AI, giving a place to innovation, and the way we are facing it is really touching the essence of our activities.
Understood. Bjorn, what are your thoughts?
I'm happy that you mentioned friction, because in the studio, our mantra is we thrive in friction. So we look for friction, because that is where art, or the kind of art that we think we make and want to do, has a reason to perform and act. Let's say we did a project called 1, 2, 3 Swing. It's a 3-person swing that is then connected with an orange line. We have recently installed it in the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. So there's definitely friction there. So instead of saying, you know, the people on one side most likely also want to be with their family that they haven't seen for 50 years. So how can we not be there? So we are installing this 3-person swing on the South Korean side, looking onto the North Korean side, and then there's an opportunity of thinking about them over there, what they want.
Yeah.
And then there's also a 3-person swing, which means if there's friction, there's most likely more than 2 sides. Either it's the cause of the friction of problem, or it's the one that might solve it. So you sit on that swing, you try to find balance, and maybe all of a sudden you find it, and that moment of joy maybe gives you a perspective or a dream of that it is possible to break down that fence or wall and so on. So friction is to be embraced.
Friction.
Or else we end up, manifesting status quo or conflicts even more so.
Yeah. Authenticity, messaging, all of those components being sort of universal truths in that. Chris, from your standpoint, looking at the fact that you're, creating immersive experiences which are predominantly digital, what's your view on areas of friction, either as a service provider or as an active participant in the cultural sector? When you look at it, like, are people struggling with access? Is it monetization? Where is the friction here?
Yeah, the greatest friction that we see is between the slowness of regulations and standards of how to operate, and this spans from the government to sort of the academic side of a cultural standard. To give you an idea of how slow it is, the cultural heritage industry has spent 30 years debating about what is the appropriate video format to preserve a piece of video content. And that friction with the slowness of standards is in complete conflict with the speed of technology and being able to understand how to adapt new technology. That could be immersive technology, that could be artificial intelligence, it could be blockchain technology, because one moves so slow and they want to debate everything and argue about everything and sometimes take decades to make a single decision. And then the other is changing on a daily basis in a matter of seconds.
That's a fascinating paradox if you think about it, because technology has a propensity to fatigue very rapidly. So as you try and regulate or standardize or institutionalize a certain quality standard, the very thing that you're standardizing could be redundant overnight. So there is a tension here which also needs to be evaluated to create, I guess, the framework within which, the digital collaborative components or constituents can collaborate together in a more meaningful way. Now, another question for yourselves. We've got about 7 minutes. I'm going to ask a different question now. One of the truths is that it's safe to say that culture is, first of all, deeply human. I think that's a truth. So if culture is deeply human, then is digital adding water to the milk, or is it making culture richer? What's your thoughts on this paradoxical nature of what seems like inherently dehumanizing as a platform? How do you use it to humanize and create? How do you balance that? What do you do as your golden rules of engagement when you take culture and take a message around it, whether it's an expression or an opportunity of exchange? How do you balance that tension? Or what is deeply human, is it really actually the same authentic experience in a digital world?
Well, that's a great point, actually, because when we started using, for example, also digital twins and 3D technologies, you're so free that you can do anything, right? At that point, from our sense, we had to kind of restrict ourselves to use the technology in a way that made sense for our ultimate mission. So I think to having a guiding light when you have too much freedom is very helpful. And I actually met Roy in 2020 under the pandemic, and that's when we started using 3D, when we digitized the Grand Palais itself. So we digitized an iconic building instead of creating a fantasy world. And no one could go out at the time. There was the pandemic. And so we actually partnered also with the Saudi Fashion Commission, and we brought 200 delegates. And we had to digitize the classic clothes of the Saudi, respecting the digital representation of the physical, because these are very important, for example, cultural garments that had to be respected in that sense. And same for the building. It could not be any fantasy involved, otherwise we would be blocked.
Sure.
And so,
interesting. Roy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that digital is not human or not human, it's how you use it and how can we use it in different ways. And of course, if we use it in the human way, it's human. And of course, if we use it in another way, it's not. I'll give you the example of AI and why it's so important to have, for example, heritage content feeding the AI. Because if not, we will have only our superficial web content without any depth, without any history. This is why, and by using history, depth, diversity, we are in the center of what we call a human usage of technology. So it's not about what it is, it's how we work with it.
Beyond? Thank you, Roy.
I would say that from my perspective, our perspective, it would be healthy and also time to move beyond the human perspective. Data is made by humans, right? It's it's very dominant. The power of data, so on. So much of this planet that we are very interdependent of is not data. It is interactions between organisms, plants, and other species, and so forth. So data can be used to motivate us to learn more and dive into other perspectives of life. So I would not give so much credit or focus on the human culture and so on, because without every other element of, let's say, the more the big culture and perspective of the planet and interactions between them, then we only become poor and less.
I think it's a complementary, not a substitution approach. That
Absolutely.
needs to be part of it. Chris, your thoughts?
So you actually jumped right to, I think, the perspective we see, right? Like normally when this topic is brought up, there's a fear that digital is trying to replace the in-person experience. And I don't think these two things are competitive, right? I can't recreate digitally the experience of standing in front of a masterwork, of seeing it with my own eyes, and experiencing it with all my senses. Digital isn't meant to try to replace that experience. It's meant to supplement it to do new things. And most institutions, you only have the physical space to show 1% to 3% of what you have. Digitally, you can go far deeper into the stories and the moments and the experiences behind an artwork or behind a historical object. Digitally, we can take an object that's in a modern building and create an experience that puts you back 2,000 years so you can experience it in a different way. And so I think it's looking at digital as a new vehicle, and also to remember that for any institution, any cultural organization, less than 1% of the entire world's population will ever physically be there to see it, right? Digital isn't trying to do something different for those 1%. It's about trying to be able to create an experience for the rest of the world, the other 99%, to be able to engage and interact and learn all the good things that come with culture.
So inclusivity and access becomes a
Absolutely.
critical aspect to it. Over the past few years, I've grown an allergy with the word content, because content is now, a widely bandied word. In many ways, you could say, what isn't content? Everything is content. And in this context, when you have a prolific amount of content being produced on a daily basis on media, whether it's the number of songs, the number of films, the YouTube posts, etc., how do you draw the distinction on what is truly culturally authentic, of value, as opposed to the superficial aspects of content? And what advice would you have to give to people when they're looking at curating or creating their own digital expressions to whatever authentic aspects of those cultural artifacts or narratives that they'd like to bring to the table? So maybe talk a little bit about the distinction between gimmicks and what actually is a meaningful digital experience.
Definitely. Well, we're probably all familiar with the term of the dead internet, right? Now Instagram, I think, already has around 30 or 40% of the content is AI generated. And I think in the future, I don't have the answer, but there's more and more of this AI slop invading the internet, and the value of human is just going up and up, I think.
Wonderful. As we're running out of time, I'm going to give a minute each to all of you just to wrap up on this particular component on how do you avoid risks.
We're just at the beginning of digitization and content creation. It will go on and massively will continue. The thing is, and each one from his point of view, our as cultural institution to be responsible of the way we share it and the way we prescribe it for our publics.
Bjorn, what are your thoughts as we wrap up?
My thoughts would be that we should look at the formats of data, machines and tools and so on. They are our collaborators. They are to play with. Without playing, you don't understand, or you can also not act either positive or negative or inclusive. So everything really is about playing with all systems that are human-made, because they are social constructions.
Chris, your thoughts?
Play along. Yeah.
I think a lot of film and TV studios have tried to create content based around what data or an algorithm tells them people want. And what you find is that any of those attempts really haven't been successful. That when you look at the content that's really grown to be globally successful, it's always had a powerful storyteller behind it who's telling a story that's very personal to them and often very local. And so I find comfort that often data and technology can't replace that authenticness that comes through storytelling.
Wonderful, thank you. And as we conclude, so the things that I take away, digital collaboration in the digital era, it's about authenticity, meaningful interventions, complementarity, providing access. And as I've always said, in social media within the context of culture should not necessarily always be your mouth. It should also be your eyes and ears. You can learn a lot from that and then try and apply and bring that into the real realm. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panelists, and thank you so much for listening to us today. And thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fun.